It was a Saturday morning, and after breakfast, we made a list of things to buy and other engagements for the day. We made it out to the supermarket first as we contemplated whether to stop at the market and pick some local ingredients and spices first. We went to a nearby supermarket, and guess what? The unexpected happened. Eddie was pushing the trolley, and at one point, I left him in one aisle and ran back to change some Chivita orange drinks we had picked before, but discovered they were leaking. As I walked back towards him, I noticed that a woman had blocked his trolley and was shouting at the top of her voice. Some other customers started keeping a distance from them, while another passerby attempted to video the scene. As I walked closer, he attempted to turn and walk away from the lady in the opposite direction, and she swiftly turned around and blocked him again. I didn't know who it was, as I hadn't seen Kate's face that fateful morning. She had visited our house and shattered the windows. I thought of stepping aside and watching as a spectator. I was not part of what transpired. What if the girl pours acid on me? I thought to myself, Eddie will only leave me in search of another virgin. On second thoughts, though, I questioned myself, saying, how long will your husband pay for his past mistakes? Even if he had hurt her, must it amount to public disgrace? At the same time, my mind suggested that the woman in question could be the same woman who came to our house a few days ago to break our windows. Woe betides her if she is the same fool. At that point, I remembered what my paternal grandmother once told me as she recounted her encounter with her co-wives. Never allow another woman to take down your pots in your kitchen, because that will embolden her to ask you to come down from your husband's bed, not minding that he was the one who invited you to sleep with him. Without further delay, I walked straight to her and said, good afternoon, Auntie. You must be Kate, if I'm not mistaken. She looked at me from head to toe and up again, then turned to Eddie and said, clap for yourself, Eddie. This must be your Virginia from the village. Do you see your life, Eddie? I reached out to the shelf, hijacked a bottle of hot drink, switched it swiftly to my right hand, and asked Eddie to step back and let me settle the score once and for all with this lady. I must have said those words with a very stern voice because Eddie moved back without saying a word, and before I knew it, Kate was on her knees pleading with me to drop the bottle. He hasn't gotten to this, she said. You're a woman like me. If you were in my shoes, you might do something worse than this. Just imagine what I'm going through now. Neither Eddie nor his friend Ikenna cares about me. I dropped the bottle, helped her to her feet, and told her to let sleeping dogs lie. I excused myself with Eddie and told him to pay for the shopping, including those Kate's bought, while I spoke with her outside. I took her to the parking lot. We both leaned on Eddie's SUV as I told her about the gossip between Eddie and her boyfriend. Your guy confided in Eddie a few days ago after you came to break the glass in Eddie's apartment. He said he couldn't understand what went wrong with you and was relieved that he had sent you packing from his house. Eddie was as quiet as the night while Ikenna talked because he didn't know you were living with the guy. I too was shocked and wondered how you had the guts to want to blame the pregnancy on my husband. If I were in your shoes, Kate, I would ask myself again, who got me pregnant? Since you were sleeping with them concurrently when you missed your menstrual period. If in the end I can't answer that question, I must have some second thoughts about what to do with this pregnancy to avoid making myself a laughingstock. Tears soaked her eyes. She couldn't say a word. I held her and tried to console her. She gazed at the ground as if imploring it to open and swallow her. There comes a time, Kate, when we must look inward and tell ourselves the truth. Do you remember the story of the prodigal son, Kate? Despite the advice of friends to the prodigal son, I continued. Nothing happened until he woke up one morning and said to himself, I will arise and go to my father. A turning point will never occur in a situation until we own up to our mistakes, take steps towards addressing them, and damn the consequences. I paused, hoping she would be bold enough to give at least her version of the story, but she kept mute. Auntie Kate, have you ever thought of what will happen if these two friends come to a point where they joke about you and outrightly deny responsibility for your pregnancy? She was shocked and dumbfounded. I'm sure she was unaware that the secret had leaked and that I knew what transpired with Eddie and her live-in boyfriend, who was unaware of her escapades with Eddie. I felt pity for her and wondered why she listened attentively to me as if I were her age mate. I saw Eddie coming towards us with a trolley, and I made out to help him put them in the boot. I took out her shopping bags and handed them over to her. Eddie was looking at me, wondering what must have transpired between us. Auntie Kate, would you mind if we give you a ride to your house? She looked at me and shook her head in disagreement. Even though Eddie refused to speak to Kate or accept the thank you very much she offered in exchange for the free shopping, I wound down the side glass and waved at her as we drove off. Eddie looked at me and said, "Thank you, baby. I can't express how grateful I am for the many unimaginable ways you have saved my ass from my asshole ex-girlfriends. Of the truth, I don't know what I would have done with Kate if not for your prompt intervention. I was ready to pay anything to remove her before you returned to the scene. But she underrated you. If I may ask, how did it come to your mind to act like Rambo inside the supermarket? Would you have used the bottle on her for real?" I looked at him and smiled. Those of us from the village have a distinct sense of value. I can't stand and watch my husband fight with a woman in public, not to talk of watching my husband molested by a woman with questionable character. I've never met Kate in person, and based on how she acted the day she came to break your windows at home, I believe there was no room for dialogue, and decided she needed something more potent than a kid's glove to handle her fuck up. I wrongly tagged her based on her actions that day. I would have demolished her instantly if she had pulled a weapon, but thank God she respected herself, I told my husband. We later met some of his clients to show them houses and apartments in various places. After each visit, he would write an update and post it to someone he refers to as his boss. I then realized he worked with a network of house agents who acted as intermediaries and shared the commission. They also used the services of a group of solicitors who prepared the contract of sale and tenancy agreements or offer letter and followed up with any eventual litigation. After a brief visit to Snake Island, we ended up at Amuadofi near Festac Town. We passed Festac Town, which now looked like a ghost town compared to what it looked like when it was initially constructed in 1977 to host the participants of the Festival of Arts and Culture. Eddie told me Nigeria was like the proverbial country flowing with milk and honey in those days. However, the Amowo Odofin area had many beautiful residential houses that Igbo business people prevalently owned. It was a birthday party for one of his friends and was fun-packed. Eddie had never imagined that I could dance to city music, but little did he know that we village champions could do azonto and shoki dance moves better than the city people. When I took the stage with him, all eyes were on me as I buried him on the dance floor. We eventually sat for a drink. A lady who thought I wasn't Igbo congratulated him in Igbo language and questioned why he left his bushmeat at home and came dancing with someone else's princess. He quickly motioned her to shut up. I immediately ended the gossip by saying, "Auntie, sorry to disappoint you. That bushmeat or village girl, as others call it, is standing right before you." In his usual manner, Eddie laughed hysterically until the lady took her glass and relocated immediately. We got home later in the evening, and Eddie called his friend at Onitsha to see if my senior brother Ikenna visited his house as planned. After some prolonged pleasantries, typical of Onitsha business executives, he asked after my brother and handed over the phone to me. I took a deep breath in anticipation of good or bad news. "Good evening, brother Ikenna," I greeted. But the voice at the other end was that of Clement. "Good evening, sister. Ikenna just left because it was getting late. He had a long discussion with my boss. It has not been easy for him, mainly because of lack of understanding between him and his boss's wife. Brother Ikenna looks like a houseboy on whose back the madam of the house cleans her hands after dinner and makes him wash the dishes and entire kitchen until midnight before allowing him to go to bed. In the morning, he must finish the house chores, including mopping the entire floor of the house and washing their 3 cars before being allowed to have breakfast and rushing to their store at the Onisha main market. The good news is that my boss had compassion for him just like God handles those at crossroads. Collected the telephone numbers of Ikenna and his boss and promised to call him before the following weekend. He told Ikenna to relax, go home and do nothing negative until Sunday when he might visit them. After downloading the gist, which was all about Ikenna and the hardship he was facing at the shop and with the madam at home, I felt great relief knowing that Clement's boss was interested in going the extra mile to help him. The fact that he took Ikenna's telephone number and promised to call to arrange a visit with his boss was a positive sign. I sincerely believed that he had a good plan for Ikenna. I prayed and pleaded with God to touch the man's heart and cause him to take Ikenna to his house, even as a member of his household, and there was no chance at the furniture company. Clement also told me about his surprise visit to our parents last week. He had the opportunity to be part of a delivery team to install complete home furniture for an entrepreneur who had just completed a state-of-the-art mansion in Abakaliki town. We spent 3 days there, and on our way back to Onisha, I pleaded with the driver to stop at Izambo. Since no one in our family had a mobile phone, I decided to gamble on it. The only choice I had was to show up at the doorstep. It was about midday when we arrived, and guess what, sister? I don't have to guess. Clement, remember, you're using someone's telephone, so talk to me. Okay, sister, it was raining, meaning Mama and Papa will probably be home. If not, I will not have bothered to go because Mama would have gone to the market or the farm with Papa. After all, it was our local market day. Sister, you need to see how Mama shouted when she saw me. Ordinarily, an onlooker would have thought she saw a ghost. On hearing her, Papa came running out from the sitting room where he was having a private encounter with a gallon of palm wine. He asked me to bring in my crew so they could taste Ezambo's hospitality, and I complied. He pulled up the gallon of palm wine and asked me to wash 2 calabash cups so they could join him in demolishing the palm wine. In the interim, Mama rushed to the kitchen and came out with some fresh garden eggs, well-made pepper sauce. As I sat down to enjoy the freshly tapped palm wine, I joined Mama in the kitchen with our little sister, who knows what, didn't go to school that day. In a few minutes, we came up with a sumptuous bowl of abacha with fried fish in the place of the usual stuffed fish, which would have taken much longer to cook. While we made the African salad, Mama sent our little sister to wash dishes outside to avoid asking her outright to excuse us. She confided in me that Papa was worried about us, mainly because since he hadn't heard from his in-law or us, he often muttered some prayers to his chief personal God, asking him to forgive him if he used his foot and greed to send his daughter and son into the hands of ritualists. My son, she had said subtly, how is my Ada? Are you and your sister living in peace as brother and sister? What about a millionaire husband who promised to build a mansion for your father? I related a few facts to her without going into much detail to avoid creating doubts or false hopes. At that point, I noticed that Eddie had moved and sat close to me. He had a handkerchief which he handed over to me and asked me to dry my tears. I may not be able to explain those tears. I only knew that my mother, my hero, would suffer especially when she remembered her passive silence and inability to help me reach out to Auntie Promise. The latter would have been able to sit my father down and talk sense into him. On the other hand, my hustle and struggle are gradually becoming answered prayers, as God has suddenly used me to rescue Eddie and simultaneously used him to add value to my seemingly hopeless existence. My computer proficiency grew by the day because Eddie was bent on teaching me all he knew. He will always jokingly call me his company secretary in the making. Though things were not moving as Eddie expected with the rental business, going into real estate full-time gradually became his alternative. He will often blow my head with tales of how he will go into building state-of-the-art twin duplexes and selling them to off-takers on a blueprint. He bragged about his friend who had just sold the last one he constructed for 110 million naira each and made a whopping profit of 30 million on each duplex. that are boasting about their duplexes without knowing I plan to build an estate. There is this land I went to see right behind Lekki Phase 1, and I'm negotiating with the family to buy it off and start my projects.